David, welcome.
Thank you.
There's a lot for us to cover today, but why don't we start with real estate? How did you become a real estate agent?
I would say I got into the love of real estate really young. Maybe not the love when I was a kid. So my dad was an immigrant from Italy. At the age of 20, he started to invest in properties, and using the equity and start to build that. So by the time I was born, he was already like had a number of properties, and I was the youngest of three boys, and my dad would always drag me. So I got into the field when I was a kid, like going to the properties, looking, knocking up for rent, and seeing what he was doing, and kind of just absorbing what he was doing at the time, but not really understanding it.
Mhm.
Fast forward to for me going to university, I went to university in the States on a hockey scholarship. I went back, I did my MBA and was looking for work, and I landed a job as an analyst. And I remember like looking at my paycheck the first time, and it was like, all this money was taken off for taxes and CPI and all this, and EI and all this other stuff. And I was like, what the hell? And then so I didn't really think anything of it at the time. It was just like, well, I'm getting a lot less money than I thought I was going to get. And then one of my brother and my sister-in-law gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it was
Mhm.
funny because I learned, even with my business degree and my MBA, I learned more in practicality how to like run businesses through that book than I ever did in the amount of hours in the classroom. And it kind of hit home that what everything that the rich dad was doing was what my dad was doing. So when I approached him, he's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Dad, I want to buy a rental property." And he's like, "Oh, so you want to learn, huh?" So he already he was already mad at me for getting a corporate job. He's like, "I've taught you to be an entrepreneur. Why are you
Yeah.
working?" Yes, I'm like, "Why'd you think I went to school? Like, that's what they do. School teaches you how to be an employee, not an employer." So through those, I bought my first rental property with him, and he basically he helped me with a large sum of the down payment. But he basically gave me the keys and said, learn on your own. I'm like washing my hands, like, you can come ask me. And I learned a ton of things of that. And I learned how to pull equity from property. Like I was a young kid, I was 26, 25 or 26 at the time, having to deal with tenants. And then realizing like we had a fire in 2008 and revamping the property and getting a love of the property and how to showcase. And I was learning how to sell with being a landlord and selling properties and taking pictures and pulling equity and buying other investment properties. And along the way, I've had a number of real estate agents, which I wasn't too happy with, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
want to get into the profession, but I've been helping people get into investment properties by through my knowledge, right? It's like how to pull equity, how like the taxes work, what you're able to like, write off, so what you can do. And fast forward to my job in 2014, we all were starting to you get let go one by one. We had a new regime coming in, and we were all just waiting for our packages. And I finally got packaged out, and I was happy. I negotiated 10 months, 10 months. Yeah, I negotiated 10 months of severance. So I basically had to figure out my life in 10 months. And I decided, to create what I called the property manager. Me and my financial planner was a good friend of mine, and I was like, I've been helping people get into rental properties for a lot of times. I'm like, I want to be able to, help people. I'm like, and explain how do we do this for investment properties. So we created a plan like find it, fix it, run it, and the find it like I can help identify properties that are good for investments, whether it's a bungalow, which you can transform into two, whether it's a two stories, make it into a triplex, things like that. We can look and see what is valuable, like where you can save your money. The second one was find it, fix it. The part of it was I also, because I've been a landlord for a number of years, I vetted through a number of contractors in which, that they're approved. I'm like, guys, you won't get your butts burned if you hire these guys. And if you go with the first two plans, I'll run it. That's the third part for 6 months for free. And then if you want to continue the property management, we can do that again. So it was a great business plan, but when I went to go monetize it was the hardest part because where do you make money along the chain, right? Like,
Yeah.
sure, like property management is fine, but you're only making small amount of months. Like, let's be honest, like you're making 5 to 10% on every paycheck, and you're basically getting phone calls for all the negatives. It's a terrible job. For the property managers out there, I commend you. Every time
Mhm.
you from a tenant, it's not to them to say, "Hey, I love you," great job. It's always like my toilet's broken. I need this done. I need this done. Um, so the glaring hole was the realtor, and so I talked to my dad. He's like, "Hey, it's a great idea. We could do things together. I'm trying to unload properties." My dad was I was a hairdresser by trade, and was not loving being a hairdresser. My brother worked with him. He's like, I'm still kind of keeping this with him and keeping him afloat, but maybe we can start doing things together. I said, that'd be fantastic. And during the process, he had like said, okay, my dad never used to like to relinquish control, gave me all control of all the properties, so I was running them. And then, so I went to my first course, and what, I think it was 4 days before the first course, my dad passed away suddenly. And um, so anyway, I decided to like, my uncles and aunts were like saying like, listen, you don't have to do the exam, like you can push it. I'm like, no, dad and I wanted to do this. I did my exam, and without studying, we were doing a lot of sorrowful drinking, and sorry, that's just how we coped. And it was like, and I got 100% on my first exam. I was like, okay,
Wow.
okay, maybe I'm okay. That again, still not trying to be a realtor. I went to go do the second course. We did a big class at those point, and it was like 2 or 3 day course. And the realtor who's has 20 years of experience kept coming asking me questions. So she would talk about like this was the second part of the course was talking about construction. She was getting things wrong. I'd put up my hand and say, actually, like for example, one of them was they're talking about construction of inside of a bathroom and shower. And she's like, well, you should use this different type of drywall, which is green. I put up my hand. I said, actually, no, you're not supposed to use it. You're supposed to use, and I was telling her like it's basically like a concrete board so that the water doesn't penetrate behind it. If you do that, it'll lead to mold. And she's like, every little thing. I kept putting up my hand and correcting her. And and then even the math section, she would come up to me like, am I doing this right? And I came home to my wife and I said, Natalie, I'm like, what the hell? Like, what am I doing at this? This is one of the reasons why like these people have been doing this for 20 years. And I've never been a realtor to have more experience than them. Like that doesn't make any sense to
Yeah.
me. By the third course, I came home one day and I said, okay, I'm scrapping the property management. I'm like, I'm going to be a realtor. And my wife goes, well, it took you long enough. I'm like, what was the aha moment? And I was like, one of the reasons why I didn't want to be a realtor is that because of all my bad experiences I had with realtors and my
Mm.
communication with them. So, lots of prayers with God and talking with him. And like, I'm very Christian. What is that? He always guides us a certain way. And this is the one he kept saying over and over again, you're supposed to be a realtor. And what came to finally it hit home was like, you can be a realtor and you could help elevate in people's minds what a realtor is. You can help other people. You can help other realtors too. So my job is to elevate your real estate experience with other realtors as well. Like, like I've dealing with other realtors. I mentor them now. I teach them. I don't make money off of that. I try to help them. Anytime somebody asks for help, I said, absolutely. So
Mhm.
that is how I became a realtor. And I've been fairly successful, I guess you could say, in the last 10 and a half years since I've been doing it.
And so what do you think is that skill set, that differentiator to make a successful real estate agent?
So I think a lot of it has to do with a couple of things, but mostly is communication. And
Mm.
I find like the more communication that constantly, like, some of my clients will say to me, like, by the time they text me, I text them back. They're like, you're the only one who replies that quickly. And I'm like, well, you want to make sure you're being heard. And that is
Yeah,
a big, and you want to be on the side with your clients, and open discussions allows that. Whether
yeah,
it's like cut price, we talk about things that are happening. It's huge. That's huge. Second thing is actually being through the process. It's hard to be a realtor if you've never bought a house or if
oh,
you've never
that's a
sold.
big one.
And it blows my mind now. Like I still see some realtors. I'm like, and they're doing okay, but I'm like, they've never owned a house. So I'm like, how do you guide other people if you've never been through it yourself? Right? Like
Yeah,
you can almost live vicariously through them, but it's not the same as owning. I'm sorry. You don't go through like, oh, my roof needs to be replaced. My HVAC just cracked out. I have a flood in the basement. I have this. It's like, it's unbelievable. So I think those two, having the skills, but also listening and making sure you're parking your ego at the
yeah,
side. You'd be surprised how many times I get into conversations with a realtor and the first thing out of their mouth is, do you know how long I've been working in this industry? I don't care. Like, how are you helping your client? Are you relaying what I'm saying to your client?
yeah,
And I had this situation last week where actually I was calling the other agent. He's had his property listed way above asking. And I ran the report, like he's like $300,000 above asking, like above what it should be, the market value. And he's not relaying, I know he's not relaying this to his clients. He's letting his clients dictate how much the price is worth, but it's like, it just makes no sense. And I was trying to look at it logically. You got to take your heart out of it and say, like, we all have access to the same information. Here's what we're seeing. I can give you examples. He's like, well, send me your examples. I'm like, do your own homework. I'm like, I'm telling you, here's where we're at. And I'm like, you've priced this raw the price your property so incorrectly that you're not doing your clients justice. And he just wouldn't listen to me. And then like I said, talked to him yesterday after 3, 4 weeks. And he's
yeah.
like, are you still interested. I'm like, well, yeah, obviously you haven't had an offer. No one's put anything on it because you're
Yeah.
not listening. Yeah.
And that really resonates with me. I think that communication piece, if we can expand on it a little bit more, having gone through a sale of our home about a year ago, that's one of the key things that I found is things weren't really articulated to us in great detail. The last time we sold our house was 10 years ago. So a lot of things were just out of our mind, right? So when they're talking to me about whatever step of the process it may be, I'm like, okay, I'm taking it for what it is, only to get into it and then learn that there's like an additional 10 steps. I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me there were like additional 10 steps that I needed to take care of? They will bring in a staging company, for instance. They're going through the list. Okay, so we're going to move this and remove this. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. And then where's all this stuff going? Well, do you have a storage unit? I'm like,
Oh,
I
you
don't.
didn't talk.
Am I supposed to have one? Or do you take it? I'm
Yeah.
like, no, you're so
No, you didn't
okay.
take.
So why don't we start this conversation all over again? Those type of things, and I found a lot of that. Right? It's just like agents that clearly have not sold their home 15 years themselves, so they couldn't relate to what I was going through, having a family, still working full time.
And sometimes you have to repeat those a number of times. Like, so we,
Yes,
for example, one of my clients, like, listen, like they work during the day. And I'm like, we give you 2 hours notice. And I said over and over again, let me know if you need to block off. Let me know if you block. And we're getting showings. And I have to like, I hate denying showings. It's just, especially
yes,
market. If a buyer's coming to look at your property, you bend over backwards. You're like, so I've told them over and over again, if there's a time you just cannot do it, tell me, I'll block it off so somebody won't book. Because if they're
yeah,
booking that time, they may not come back because they get pissed off. So in this type of market, you have to be, you have to bend over a little bit for the buyers. And that happened. Like they wanted to see a property, and my client's like, "Can you push it by 2 hours?" And they were going to reschedule, never rescheduled. They
yeah,
might have bought another property down the road, and that's what happens. So
yeah,
you even though we explain that, like sometimes the people don't listen or they don't remember. I'm like, oh shit, I
yeah,
forgot, which is fine. But we were saying offline as well that if you sold your house, if you had an agent who's using the same techniques from 10 years ago as of today, they're out to lunch. Like things have changed so much since I've been a realtor. Like
yes,
how we incorporate videos and over in reels. We used to do longer videos. Now it's everything short, 2 or 3 types of videos, where it's promoted, how you put it, like on Instagram. If you don't know this by now, Instagram and Facebook, unless you pay for advertisement or partner or you're collaborating with somebody, which I pay for, you get buried. Only about 13% of your algorithm allows your audience to see it. Like, sure, I have like 18,000 followers, I think, at this
yeah,
point. We're trying to grow it, but it's a bigger number than somebody else. But I don't just blast it on there. I partner with people, and it's like and even with partnering people, like sometimes I'll get like 20, 30,000 views, and sometimes I'll get four. Like it just happens, right? But at least we're pushing it that way. 4,000 is better than 100 people, right? Looking at it.
absolutely.
And so you also have to know how the algorithm works and where to go, right? And it also has to be displayed. I also put it on LinkedIn, and people are like, you put your listing properties on LinkedIn. I said, do you understand how the algorithm works on LinkedIn? It's like,
LinkedIn and YouTube are supposed to be the best platforms right now.
they're huge, and we
Yeah,
put them on all of them. So when I have a friend of mine say my property's not selling, or and I have this situation where I'm hopefully going to be selling a property in Barrie, and I was talking to well, like I said, he's a friend of a friend, and he listed the property with his wife's friend, and they're like, they're not even close, but he hasn't posted anything on his social media for their house since July. And they've dropped the price a couple of times. And I'm like, did he not promote that? He's like, Dave,
yeah,
I don't know. Please do it. And I'm like, well, what was his marketing plan?
yeah,
He's like, he didn't show me a marketing plan. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, our job is to market. That's our
right.
whole job. So if he's not marketing your house, what is he doing?
What type of questions should people be asking when they're interviewing agents? And first of all, where do they start? But because there's 70,000 agents.
Yeah. So we go through those questions, and the 6 questions you should always ask. And it's part of my listing presentation. A little bit about me. Why would you choose me? What sets me
Yeah,
apart? In that, like, you should know, where have my sales been? How many sales have I done? What's
yeah,
my ask to the ratio? Like, how much more money do I earn than other clients? What awards have I won? What does that mean? What kind of areas you focus? How, like, have you sold? Have you sold in this market? What, like, and
yes.
these are because that's huge in this market. In a buyer's market, a lot of these agents have never gone through a spell like this where,
Yes, that was a huge one for us because we were selling right at a time when things were shifting. Prior to that, it's like I can post it myself. I'm going to get 10 offers and I was selling it the next day. All of a sudden, things started shifting. It was so unpredictable.
yeah.
Every day was so different.
And that's the thing is like things change all the time, right? So you have to
Yeah.
be able to pivot. You have to talk like drop prices. And unfortunately, just that's what happens, right? But not too often. You have to have some sort of a strategy, make it look different. You have to do something, right? And if you're out to lunch, if you're not getting showings anyway, you might have to drop the price. It's something you talk about, right? This should be in the beginning. Like, listen, we can price everything as is market, even undervalue. So that's huge, right? But if you price it too high, you'll know you'll get no showings. You have to be able to pivot. So the first thing question you ask, yes, is like, what have you done? And like, and the other thing is like, the second question I ask is a little bit about your brokerage. How does my brokerage actually help you? Now, in the past, the brokerages, people like in my website, is that really important? I'm like, well, yeah. Have you guys seen what happened at iPro Realty where they were scamming
Yes.
earnings? And now
Yes.
sellers can't get their money out. It matters the brokerage that you partner with. And I'm with Royal LePage Signature, which is probably in my opinion, the best brokerage in the GTA by far. And I get interviewed all the time, and I tell them what they do, and like it's amazing, and that's why I stay. I love. We have a great staff, like lots of support, which helps my clients. Anytime they need anything, we're right there. It's quick.
Yeah.
And that brings value. And the other thing it also brings value is we have like over 1,600 realtors, so we share a lot of stuff in house, and so you get eyeballs on it right away. We have people to talk with if your listing's not selling. It's just a great community, and we also get back. We're Canadian, all this other stuff. So anyway, the brokerage matters. The
Hmm.
third thing we do, which is the biggest part in this market, is how do you market your home? How are you marketing? What is your marketing strategy? And you have to have videos and pictures. And now, because nowadays we're on our phones more than we're doing anything else. Since
Yeah.
2018 was the first time that we had a shift. We were watching TV at the most, and all of a sudden 2018 came, we were on our phones. And now, so we were on our phones more since 2018, and then COVID hit even further, where we started to do everything on our phones,
Yes.
everything. So we
Everything. Yeah.
that's showing you how, like, whether it's listening to music, reading, like all news, like no one's doing paper things anymore. So digital marketing is huge. You need to get in front of people. If you don't have a digital marketing plan, you're basically a dinosaur. You need to be able to play this. So what are you doing? And it's not a matter of just posting things. It's also how it looks, because your brain retains over 80% of what you see.
Absolutely.
You have a shitty listing, if you
Yeah.
have dishes in your sink, if you have, like going into the bathroom, you have soap, shampoo bottles all over the place. You have pops of color where they're not supposed to be color. People remember, it sticks in your mind in a negative way. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure that your realtor knows that, and they're obviously like all the pictures look amazing, and at least don't offend anybody. You know what I mean? In a sense, right? So the marketing plan is like, okay, what happens at this point? Blah blah blah. You want to ask how much, what's the commission worth? What does it include? Because that's also a big issue, right? Like, so in my commission, I include all of my stuff. So I'm a full service realtor, so I include cleaning, first of all, helping you box up things, right? Boxing. We do once in a while. We used to do some storage things. We can give you access to storage, but like smaller things, right? But like, once a big storage lockers, we'll talk to them about, okay, do you have a bigger storage thing? If you have to remove a lot of your stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and when we do that is like, part of the commission is also my wife comes through. She's got probably the top staging company in Toronto, her and her partner, and she sees, thousands of homes a year, right? And so they know what they're doing. So we have her walk through, and we give you a laundry list of things that you need to do. We have to give you direction. So with all that, it's like, so that's also included. The staging, a lot of times it's included. If there's any small repairs, anything like that kind of stuff, it's all included. So you want to know what percentage you're paying. And
Yeah.
then like if there's some flexibility, obviously if I'm saving some money over here, I will pass it on to the seller. Like, listen, I don't get greedy. I'm like this, but I give you this, which is regular 5%. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But if you buy and sell with me as well, there's a discount there. Anyway, long story short, you want to know what you're paying, and you
Yeah.
want to know what that includes. So that's
Yes.
the commission. Next, you want to know what is happening in the market, especially your area. Now,
Yeah.
if you want
So
only
it is. So is it important to hire an agent that knows the neighborhood?
would say yes and no, because I also sell in tons of neighborhoods. Like I learn about it. Like it's easy to learn, right, about the
Yeah.
neighborhood. So it's good as long as like, so right now I'm actually listing a property today in St. Thomas, which is just outside of
Yeah.
London, 2 hours away. But I remember like I knew how to evaluate the property. I partnered with a friend of mine out there. I said, listen, at least you'll have access if somebody wants to show the property. Like I can do that as well. But I gave the seller the tips. Here's what we need to do. Here's what I could tell from the listing. So
Yeah.
it's good, but it's like it's not imperative that you have somebody there. You just need somebody that can do all those access. You also want to make sure that you're in the when they're posting, that's on the right board. Now, Toronto real estate that we have is like the TREB, we call it Toronto Regional Real Estate. Now we've had a lot of the smaller, areas all come into our system. So you only have to list in one place that goes here. But there's other places like Hamilton or Hamilton, so not Hamilton, like Waterloo. They're still on their own system. So you could
Mm,
promote a listing in, for example, like I posted one in, I sold one in, say Kingston, Kitchener. I sold one
yeah,
in Kitchener. So I had to put it in the Kitchener board and I put it on the Toronto board because there are people looking from Toronto to go there too. And like, so it was a double listing, but it has to be on both boards. As long as you know how to do that, you're fine, right? You
yes,
want to know, you're talking to your sellers, you want to know what the schools, we also prepare like a report telling about the schools and parks, access, all that kind of stuff too. So you want to do some research on there too. It's easy enough to figure out what the selling features are of the home. And if you
yeah,
don't know, if the realtor doesn't know, the good idea is like, book some appointments with your sellers and get to know the neighborhood if you don't know what it is. But
yeah,
I've sold in Kitchener before. Like I said, like I didn't live in Kitchener, but I own
yeah,
properties. But I know the area and I knew what the access point. Most of the people know, like the buyers also have their own agent to help them as well. So you got to
yeah,
remember, you know everything. So I don't always agree with selling. It has to be somebody local. It doesn't always make sense, but I would always interview them as well,
yeah,
because they're what sells people a lot of times, which is bullshit. Oh, I have some sellers in case you might be interested in this area. And that gets people like, and they say like, oh yeah, really? And then once you sign the contract, what happened to the sellers? Oh, I'm going to try to bring them through and they never show up. It's a line
because
many, many times. Do not fall for the line. What's it happens. And it's like, so I would interview at least three agents, and that way you see like so there's because everybody does things differently, right? So
yeah,
that's what coming back to the fifth point is like what's happening in the market. They need to know stats of what's happening in your own particular market. So when I do like
yes,
an update, we give the GTA, like the
yeah,
whole GTA. But I always say in the end, because we can only get like 90 seconds as a reel. And then first of all, you start to lose a lot of audience. We try to be like, try to do a minute and we're helping
yeah,
chat is helping. I'm like, here's my information. Like, how do I cut this down so I don't lose seller or
yeah,
people's interest? But at the end of it, I'm like, listen, we can't present every type of micro market because it's impossible
yeah,
because like there's different markets in the GTA. Whether you're going from, there's GTA, then there's what if you're buying something in Toronto? Well, within Toronto, there's all these subdivisions in Toronto. There's what
yes,
C1, C2, C3, C14. Then there's in the West, and it's like, and then within those ones, there's even smaller markets. And then what type of property? Look, are you talking condos, semis? So when somebody's approaching your telling you what's happening in the market, they'll give you the GTA stats. What I do is I give the GTA stats and see how your area is. So, for example, if you're selling Mississauga, or Toronto. I would say, okay, here's what's happened in Mississauga, here's what's happened in Toronto, here's GTA. Okay. And I'm like, but in your particular area, if you're in Clarkson or if you're in C1, here's what's happening in here. And here's what's happening in semi-detached or detached properties and how much months of inventory. So you want to show them that this is where you're up against, right?
yeah,
And then finally, you want to know what your home is worth and how they got to that. Now that's a huge, 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 that should be a huge, huge red flag for you. And you need to interview at least three realtors because if you interview just one realtor, right? Which fine, sometimes I get jobs because of realtor, but I can back up my numbers based on numbers. I
yeah.
don't do on feelings. Some of these agents we call it overselling a property. They'll agree with any price you say just to get the listing.
Oh my gosh.
So we all have the same access, right?
Yeah,
And we'll tell you what they're like based on this, and you got to take emotion out. Bedrooms are worth something, bathrooms are worth another thing. Your lot size, the width is worth this, is with more length. But pools actually don't matter. Size of the property matters. And then if you renovated or non-renovated, those are the garage. Like we could put a numeric value on all of those.
hmm,
But the problem is sellers are throwing emotions in there, and
yes,
it's very
yeah,
subjective. Right? And an agent will placate to that and just get the listing. I'll give you an example. I had a listing presentation, and this was when the market kind of turned for a bungalow not too far from here. And the last four sales, exactly the same bungalows, were selling between 1.3 and 1.35. Exactly the same condition, actually not on as busy street as they're on. And there's two brothers and they're selling for their mom. Their mom went into a home. And they said, well, that's nice, but I'm like, but we want at least 1.5. I said, okay, well, you're not going to get 1.5. We all have access to the same information. I
yeah,
can't, I'm not going to sell for 1.5. It's just like, well, There's an agent, she was here for 2 hours off a big team. I won't say the team's name because I don't want to get in trouble. And they're more interested in listing homes than they are in selling homes because they want to show how many listings they have. I said, listen, I sell my own, like every time I do a listing, it costs me about 10 grand, like around there
Yeah.
between. Right? So if I don't price a property right and you don't sell quickly and the property expires, I lose that money
Yeah.
because that's my risk, right?
Yeah.
That's what this person, she can list it forever she wants. She doesn't care if it sells or not because she's doing cheap pictures. She's doing $150 pictures. So it's like she doesn't care. So I don't do that. I do like the full package. So sure enough, I said like, they're like, but we want to hire you, but we want you listed at 1.799. I was like, whoa, where did that number come from? 1.1699. And there was nothing to justify that. So I was like, you understand, other realtors,
Yeah.
we run our numbers. When we're putting an offer, and we're not just going to give you an offer because you've asked for it. Like it
Yeah.
has to make sense. So explain to me why your property is worth $300,000 more than your neighbor that sold. And they couldn't do it. I'm like, listen, I'm like, do yourself a favor, hire that other agent. Like if I will not, I'm not listing your property for you. I'm like, remember, I'm in the business of selling homes, not in listing homes. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
I get paid when everything, when everybody's happy and the contract signs, and I make sure my clients are happy and well, and then they understand it, right? I'm not doing so. Sure enough, they listed with this agent, and then they had to drop it by a couple $100,000, and it was on the market for 6 or 7 months. They fired her, hired another guy. He called me again. And I said, I'm like, no, I'm not listening. Are you come down real? You're actually, and now the prices had dropped. I'm like, you're
Oh my
probably
gosh.
than what I told you. Well, this other guy will listen like again. And they're asking me about other agents in the area. I'm like, and there's a guy named there's Jody Thompson in her neighborhood. He's like, was in her other. I'm like, Jody's great. I'm like, yeah, he sells a lot of homes. He does like too. Like, I don't think he's going to go with your marketing plan, but he's great. And I asked another agent too, Anna Santos, another person who was like, I said, they're fantastic too, but I guarantee you they're not going to go with your price. And they didn't. So they went with this other guy who listed then at 1,489 or something like that. Long story short, they couldn't sell. It was almost a year and a half. It was on the market. If they would have, again, the market will tell you what the property's worth. And I don't understand where people come at us as
Yeah.
realtor and like, you're effing everybody up. It's all your fault. It's like, we are the middlemen. We don't force people to buy. We don't force people to sell.
Yeah.
The
And
prop,
right now it's changing like daily. Daily
yeah.
it's changing.
And
Now
we're still
how
getting, yeah. If you go to my TikTok, you see the amount of comments. And it's like,
okay.
people, the negative comments towards us realtors. I'm like, I get it, but we're not the ones setting the price. And we're not the ones that the reason why you can't buy a home. Like,
Yeah.
remember, we're the middlemen. That's what we are, right?
Just facilitating the transaction. Now, what are your thoughts on House Sigma? Because I find that a lot of sellers sort of rely on that for sort of data just to kind of see how
I,
accurate it.
I absolutely love House Sigma. I
Okay.
did. And I tell
Yeah.
all my, we used to have this other thing called Listed, which was kind of similar to House Sigma. So things you got to be careful with House Sigma though. It's like one, like you're saying, that estimated value is usually wrong because if, for example, like if you list a property below what it's worth, the algorithm doesn't understand that. So say your house is worth 1.2, but you want to get a bidding more and you list it at 999. And because of other things, if the other properties are selling below asking, they'll say your property's worth like 980, even though it's worth like 1.2, right? So you got to be careful. So that
Mhm.
valuation is not always accurate. So be careful. But again, it's a computer, it's AI in the background. And remember, the market will dictate what the property is worth, not
Yes.
algorithm. So take that with a grain of salt. The second thing you have to be careful about, House Signal, when I first started, was not a brokerage. They were just an information tool, but they realized that all these leads were coming in. So they created a brokerage. So now
Oh.
if you look at House Sigma and you want to see a property on there and you click on it, it says, oh, show me this property. They're going to send you one of their own agents, not the listing agent. And
Mhm.
people think it's listing agent. If you want to get the listing agent, you have to copy the MLS, go to realtor.ca and then contact them.
Mhm.
That goes. So realtor.ca is different than Realtor.ca is good, but it doesn't have all the remarks, doesn't have the value for what they've sold for. That's why I like House Sigma. The other thing is House Sigma is they're trying to ban us realtors from using it. So I have to use like a Hotmail account. I can't use my Royal LePage account. Yeah, yeah. Well, they won't let realtors because they don't want any competition.
Hmm.
So it's a very useful tool. And I tell my clients to use it all the time. They set up, even though I set them up with searches through our Treb system, a lot of them will just like looking at House Sigma. They'll set up their own. I said, that's fine. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
if there's something you like, my clients do all the time, I've set you up with listings, but sometimes they're listing, their parameters are changed or they're in an area and they're like, "Oh, let's see what that house is worth." I'm like, "Hey, Dave, can we see this one?" "Yeah, sure." I always tell my clients, even if you see it on Facebook, Instagram, take a screenshot of it, send it to me. Let me do research behind you. Let me know. I could tell you the history of it. I could talk to the other agents, see if it's worth
Yeah.
showing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like it for sort of historical data as well. Like if I'm, thinking about buying a property, I look at it, it's like when was it sold last? And then prior to that, what did it look like? What changes did it make? It kind of gives me a bit more context for the property. That's what I use it for.
Well, it's great for that as well because when clients like when sometimes if a price comes in, like, "Hey, look at the price of this house." Like,
Yeah.
why is it so low? I'm like, well, look at the history. If you look at the one below it, was it
Yes.
well, like last week at a higher price, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden there's a dramatic drop. You'll know that it's probably they're trying to get a bidding war. They didn't sell it at their wish price. Let's use 1.2. All of a sudden now you're at 999. I'm like, they want close to 1.2. Like
That's
that's
exactly it. Yeah.
so it's also I also help educate my clients. I'm a different realtor, I think, than some of these other guys. They when we first joined the industry, they didn't want their clients having all this information. I don't know, it's
I
like
could see that being an issue. Yeah.
the older I call them older, like so older
Yes.
realtors, they may some of them are younger than me. They're like they wanted to keep all the information because they want their clients to come to them and just so they
Right.
were
Because
like
you feel like,
already.
okay, they need me like because I have the information. Yeah.
But I think the more information my clients get, the better. The more educated they are, the better it is that they can make an educated decision. And you're not hoarding the information. They can also look on the stuff. So they're doing a lot of research on their own. They're doing it anyway. I help facilitate that. I'm like, yeah, I can dig deeper to what you already know. So yeah, I think more information is better. But don't
Yeah.
get to the point. Don't get paralysis by analysis. So like, that's good
Yes.
information, but then I also have the clients, well, how far is the price going to drop? It's like, listen, at the end of the day, if you're looking for a certain price point, you always get pre-approved first. We'll send you up with mortgage brokers. If you don't have your own, don't go to the bank.
Yeah.
Don't- if you deal with mortgage brokers, they deal with the banks too. They get you better rates and better
Yeah.
products. Not all products the same. Get qualified first. We'll put you in those parameters, and then you can make an educated decision, right? Like it's like so. If you find something you like within your price point, and it's
Yeah.
check the list, don't always be waiting for the next best thing because then you'll never buy anything.
I wanted to dig into something a little bit more that you've mentioned. Uh, Brokerage firms, as a real estate agent, are you employed by them as an employee? Are you independent contractor? How does that relationship work for those
We're
people that?
basically
Mhm.
we're independent contractors. We're
Okay.
in,
Yeah.
and I have a corporation that pays us, so which they allowed us to do just during COVID, which they didn't let us do before. But yeah, we're independent contractors, and it's like so we're hired. So the brokerage is there to facilitate the sales. In the past,
Yeah.
they were technically representing you, but the new laws, what came out a couple of years ago, is you have a designated representative. So it's like so now we specifically designate me, if you will, like not the brokerage, as your representation. So yeah, we're independent contractors.
So now to shift it to the current market and what's going on in Toronto, the craziness. Um, and I guess, your thoughts on what's to come in spring, if we can even anticipate.
Well, so we've had this conversation with I think about a million people. Um, and honestly, like there's one conversation with Ben Tal from CIBC, and he was basically stating that we expect a lot of the same. 2027 should be for the lower rise properties to start to see some really gains. Like we are currently experiencing the slowest market for sales per capita that we've ever seen since the inception of the MLS system. If,
Wow. So how
if you
long
look
has that been? How many years?
in the 80s or 90s, it's been a long time.
Wow.
And if you look at just intrinsic numbers, the actual number, the amount of sales, it's the slowest sales we've had, not even per cap, just by sales in general
Yeah.
on the last 30 years. So it's slow. Not that being said, prices are, prices have stabilized in the sense that they're not going up and down. Over the last 3 years, since the interest rates started to increase, we've been hovering around that $1.1 million mark, a little bit above, a little bit below. We're
Yeah.
not dipping below the $1 million mark, and we're not getting too much above the 1.1 mark.
Yeah.
And interest rates or non-interest rates hasn't really affected it. So what that tells us is the underlying basics, the underlying fundamentals of the Toronto Real Estate Board, and that includes, all of GTA, is still sound. Because
Yeah.
when those interest rates went up 4% or 4.5%, if we didn't have solid fundamentals, the price of people would have been foreclosing on homes, people would have been losing like everything, and the rest
Yeah.
of the economy would have got hammered. That being said, we are still in yeah, I still think we're in a recession, but we're still got to look at like we have high unemployment rate. We have what, how many millions of people? I think 41% or so of the homes, of 40% of people are going to food banks this year.
Yeah.
That's not just high. Like inflation is kind of stabilized, but the tariffs are also affecting us. And what's happening with the tariffs is it's really just giving us buyer uncertainty, and no one really knows how those are going to affect us. And that's the problem. The problem itself is not the tariff itself,
Yeah.
the unknown of the tariffs. What is the amount? Because we cannot move forward unless we know we gonna spend, or do we have to lay off people because of these interests? Are we able to hire people? Where are we able to put infrastructure in here? Where are we gonna go? Unless they have a number, the CEOs are kind of stuck. That being said, there's a whole different market. We talked about micro markets. The condo market is a totally different animal.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and if you're looking to buy, oh my God, if I you had cash in hand, we haven't seen prices like this in condos in
I can
years.
imagine.
We have dropped $100,000 in most areas on average, for condos. In some places like Bolton, dropped $180,000, but most properties in the last 3, 4 years dropped $100,000 from what you would have purchased in 2022. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
People that couldn't afford to get into properties before now are able to afford. Now the question is like, well, where do you want to go? How much you want to spend, et cetera. But there are some very good opportunities. Now, why did that happen? Well, a number of things is like when Trudeau came out and they said that, that he was going to increase the amount of capital gains. We had a lot of people put up their rental properties up for sale. They didn't want to get hit with that extra, 16% on top of the 50% after $250,000 they earn. That was the first issue. Secondly, was Airbnbs during the pandemic were not allowed anymore. So again, more people put your units up for sale. And then you also had they had the increase of the amount of properties coming to market. So these pre-construction ones, which were slated to be pushed out to later on, they all came out this year. And
Mm.
the huge problem with that was that what they purchased the properties for, some of them were like say $900,000 because they thought that the market was continuing to increase. They bought these things like 7 years ago. Well, now
Yeah.
in reality, the resale value is only like 650. So it's less, I'm using it as an example. It's less
Yeah.
than what they agreed to pay, and the banks aren't funding that. So you have to come up with the difference or sell the property at a loss. And right now, people that are moving forward with properties that were bought at pre-construction. So again, you bought it 7 years ago, you bought it for plans, you didn't know, like
Yeah.
they basically figured if the market would have continued, you should have been worth what you paid, if not more. Well, now it's much less. Well, now a lot of those people that are, that they're getting the funding are losing 84% of those guys that got the purchasers that got the keys are losing over $1,000 a month. And a lot of
Wow.
people can't afford that, right? To keep that,
Yeah.
keep so they'd rather lose properties at a loss. There was a guy on the news. He had to take out a $300,000 mortgage in order to facilitate his sale because
Wow.
to come up that 300,000. So he sold it for $300,000 less, but he couldn't facilitate that. He didn't want to go get bankrupt. He didn't want to get sued. So that's what happens. If you can't close the property, you get sued. So he sold it on assignment. An assignment means you buy something in pre-construction off the papers and I sell those papers to somebody else. Well, the difference from what he sold it for from what he bought it for was $300,000. So he basically had to get a mortgage for $300,000 for nothing.
Gosh.
Now he's just so he wouldn't ruin his credit. So that's happening. So we have an influx. So of course, people right now have lots and lots of choice. Sorry, my phone was going on here, Ronan.
Yeah.
There's much more choice. And demand is still there, right? But also with the immigration, which is decreasing. So you got to remember with immigrants coming into Canada, within 5 years, historically, most of them purchase and a lot of them do buy condos, right?
Yeah.
So if you're reducing the amount of immigration, that means you're reducing the pool of also buyers. So
Yeah.
and demand is still there, but supply is increased, which means that prices have decreased. And that's what we're seeing
Yeah.
right now.
And so people obviously are aware of this. Some may be taking the opportunity to buy. Which neighborhoods would you recommend that are family friendly, that are growing, and they're still not too expensive?
Well, if you're, are you looking for condos? You're looking for homes?
The houses, like a family of four. A
so there,
star.
well, I have family for like Aurora is still like doing really well. Like where I've bought sold a couple of properties. Even the condo market is the only one in the GTA that's actually up almost 24%. Aurora is great. I love Etobicoke and I live in Etobicoke.
Yeah.
Schools are
Which
great.
part of Etobicoke do you like?
I live in Humber Valley now,
Yeah.
but we were living like in Stonegate Queensway before, which is also a fantastic area. I think anything south of the 401, like there are a lot of good schools, access. I'm biased because I grew up in Etobicoke and I love Etobicoke, but I find that when you live here and when people move here, you're only half an hour away from everything, right? When I have to go to
Yes.
Burlington, I like
Yeah.
Burlington, I like Oakville, I like those properties that are still more mature. Mississauga is a great property, as those are areas. I would stay away from properties that are very volatile, right? So you have some of your properties like Ajax in those areas that I find that
Mhm.
so when the markets are high, they're also high. When the markets are low, they go low as well. Find that like some places, somewhat in Barrie as well, very similar. But Toronto stays pretty level, and that's why I like
Yes.
like the older markets, and that's why I'm saying Mississauga area, like those ones are doing well. So you got close to the core of Toronto, whether it's even Burlington's doing well, Mississauga. I would stay away from Brampton.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just would
Yeah.
stay away and a place in Toronto, depending on where you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's really
And
good
I always
advice.
thought people always want to know where the up and coming neighborhoods are, and I know you asked that too. It's like we can predict, but there's areas we've been calling up and coming for years, and they never they haven't
They
come up
never
here.
they never come up.
So I
That's true.
always,
Listen.
I always warn people when they say be careful of the up and coming because you don't know if that coming is going to be 100 years from now.
Yes.
Like look
Yeah.
at
You're
Regent
so
Park.
you're so
Regent Park.
right.
We were looking for properties in 2014. Natalie and I were looking for my wife and I were looking for properties, and Regent Park was supposed to be the ones that's supposed to be amazing. We were like almost paying the same values you were as like down as regular downtown Toronto. They're still not there. It's
Yeah, there.
yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you with Etobicoke. We actually just moved to Etobicoke ourselves from High Park. The biggest transition was just going from a neighborhood where we were kind of walking everywhere to now driving. Oh my gosh, we have a driveway. Which is like, oh my gosh, we have a driveway. You don't understand how happy I am to have a driveway. And
Well,
so
my first property I talk about is on Howard Park. It's Howard.
there you go.
It's Park. So I know like the struggles, and like I actually have parking for my tenants. I have a sixplex there, and they're
Yeah.
like eyes open. I'm like, you have parking here in High Park? I'm like, yep.
People look at me like I'm crazy when I'm like, I get so excited. I'm like, look, I have my friends that live outside of the city, like in suburbia. They're like, oh my God, like, how did you survive for 10 years without? Now, when I go back to Ronsi, I'm like, I love it, but I'm like, I can't.
Yeah,
I don't even know how we're surviving those tiny little homes with no driver for so long. But beautiful neighborhood because it
beautiful.
offers other things of walking. I mean, like, it
You
feels,
have
it's
High
like a
Park right there.
European vibe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got High Park right there. You got a lot of the Polish community really close by.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
obviously I love Ronci, but I think the prices are ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
What I paid from how property is worth now, your jaw would drop.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
gone up, I think, over $3 million in 20 years.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
put some money into it, but it's like astounding. I can't
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Wanted to switch gears a little bit to your podcasting that you do. Tell me a little bit more about how long you've been at it. Why did you get started?
But the idea of the podcast, which is called DC Talks, which we filmed in my most of the time, I'd say 95%. Once in a while, we'll do like a cigar thing or something back here. But it's been a work in progress. Like it's kind of a passion project, and what it is basically we talk about everything. We start off talking about real estate because I thought wanted to get people to know who I am and look at my expertise. But you also find that sometimes that there's only so much real estate you can really talk about. I could talk about real estate, but you want to make sure your audience is always engaged. And then what happened was we're starting that, and I talked about a story which happened in 2022 where I had a brain issue, which is an AVM. I had a blockage in the back of my brain, and I went to my doctors for years, and they had to go to a private clinic, and I was worried about the vaccine. My dad died at 72 of heart disease. We talked before. My grandfather died at 45, obviously of a massive heart attack. So with our job, they didn't mandate us to have the vaccine, but I was starting to hear rumbles about that they were going to make us have it. And by this point, we already knew that it caused heart issues, myocarditis. There were people having many, many severe reactions. My assistant's godmother died from the second shot. She was 63 years old. She got the injection. She almost fainted. They brought her to the hospital. 2 hours later, she died. And it was, she never had heart issues. So I'm like, I was worried about my heart. And long story short, it turned out that I had a blockage in here, which thank God I get the vaccine because it would have killed me. So we started to talk about the process, what they've done, and it was just very emotional. And there was a little bit of a spike that happened in the viewership. So we started talking more and more men things. And I like, I'm also a conspiracy theorist, I guess. I've been for like, since I became Christian in 2009, I used to be Catholic and we did a little new age stuff. And then I became Christian in 2009 um, it just things got revealed. And we started talking about the Christianity stuff too. Just, I wanted people to know more behind the scenes about me because I found that's what we were talking with my producer. He was saying like, people want to know more about you. Like, sure, like you are an expert in real estate. We still will talk about the real estate stuff, but wanted to know a little bit more behind my brain. And so
Yeah.
we record 4 episodes in a day. And we were doing like a real estate. We'd bring in a guest. We would talk about something that was about health. And then we'd bring like a conspiracy theory thing. And so kind of
Yeah.
like showing all different aspects of my personality. And it was going well, but it's like, it's running its course in the sense that we just want to put a purposeful pause on it so I can get out to see other people and like yourself and just kind of share real estate knowledge, share a little bit about my journey and how things have happened along the way.
And if people are thinking of starting a podcast, what would be sort of your best advice, things that you've learned?
Be consistent. I think over and over again, and you also make sure you do your research. You and I were talking about this. It's like
Yeah.
if you're doing it on your own. One of the reasons why I hired my podcast guys, I'm busy. I don't have the time to cut the clips to edit them.
Yes.
Kind of
Yeah.
stuff too. My assistant also does all the postings on. So no, you want to be consistent and also make sure you have the time. I do your research because maybe you want to do like maybe try one out, and I know you have some your own tools which help with
Yeah.
that. So research on that, but also find topics of which that are I would say talk to you that have an audience. Like it
Yeah.
could be important to you, but if you're talking about the lips of fish for episodes, nobody's going to care. Uh, and the other point I would say is like most podcasts, over 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because they realize there's a lot of work that goes into
There's
that.
a lot of work. Oh my gosh, there's a lot
Yeah.
of work.
So if you can make it past 10 and be consistent with it, you're doing right.
Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on that I really appreciate about you is that you're very authentic to yourself. You state your mind. You say things as they are, whether they're things that, other people can appreciate is, another conversation, but you get them out there. You say it. So what is your why for being so courageous and brave and just kind of putting out all those topics out there? Because I have to think that sometimes it might impact your business.
I was in the beginning. I would have never talked about the vaccine during COVID because they're just so polarized about it. And the reason why I do what I do is God wanted me to talk about certain things because I did have a platform and I wasn't going to be a lukewarm Christian. Right? Basically, the teachings were always if you believe something, if it's of God, you should speak about it and God will take care of you.
Mhm.
And when I saw injustices happening, like I thought the whole election was such a sham. Like
Yeah.
it's the things happening going back and forth. I was very, very vocal about how much I was against Trudeau, what he was doing, what he's done to our country. One of the pastors I was listening to is like, you don't want to be meeting somebody that's going to hell and to say, you never told me about Jesus. Well, that will never be me. Like I never want to be that person. If you want to talk about my faith and how he's changed my life and where we were before as opposed to now. And I think because of my upbringing and all the struggles we had, it shaped me. And I was a little worried about talking to him in the beginning, but I was like, oh, I need to talk about that. I had topics which, fortunately, my brokerage made me take down a few of my podcasts because it was too controversial and people were complaining about them.
Yeah.
And I put them out there. I said, listen, I actually called my brokerage. And when they called me the one time to take one of the podcasts, I'm surprised it took you this long.
Sure, they must have called you. They did. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And it actually happened a few months back, right? And
Yeah.
they wiped out 3 in a row. And we talked about certain things of which, as a Christian, which you know which side we're on, but it was controversial, which wasn't, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I said I had to talk about because a lot of times we get silenced as men because people don't want to listen to us or whatever it is. It's just I
Yeah.
just felt I needed to talk about it and just get off my chest, and, like, I put it out there and yeah, like, I've lost friends in my brokerage because of some of the stuff I say, and I'm like, "Well, then you weren't really my friend, right? You didn't really get to know me."
Yeah.
We couldn't have, like, an open discussion about it, and it was like, I'm the idea, and I talked to my uncles and stuff to watch my stuff on TikTok. They're like, some of the stuff, that you say, we just don't agree with. And I'm like, Zeal, you're not supposed to agree with everything I
Yeah.
say. And the idea is to spur conversations.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's and whether you liked Charlie Kirk or not, and he always said, he goes, our society would start to die.
Yeah.
People start to stop to communicate.
Yeah.
And and he was saying, like, and I got into him like a little while ago, but some of the stuff we had talked about before, like it just made sense. So we were along the same path. It's like, I'd rather, what is the saying? Like, if you stand for nothing, what do you fall for? Right. And that people won't know. If the people don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for it.
Over the past 5 years, because there have been so many topics that have been, so polarizing. I found it interesting to especially lose their friendships and the family that you thought you knew. It's one thing to be canceled by a stranger that you don't know, but then to friends and family, they're just kind of like, I don't agree with you and therefore I'm walking away. What?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
we've known each other for how long? Do you not know me as a human? How is this? I don't get it. I'm still trying to get my head around it.
Yeah. Well, the whole COVID thing was an eye opener for a lot of us, right? And just seeing where people lie and how people treated other people. I lost a deal because wasn't vaccinated. I explained, I'm trying to figure out if I'm even a candidate. Like, so we're trying to, and just the look of disgust on some people's face. And I was like, I'm trying to preserve my life here. And I've already had COVID twice at this point. So I already have the I'm getting the test for it. So I'm like, I'm no threat to you. And I'm like, you understand that? Like, I'll wear my mask, which again, we know didn't help anybody. But anyway, we did everything. I'll social distance. I'll be away. I'll follow the other rules. I just won't get vaccinated. And I lost a $4 million deal because of that. But again, we got to remember, why am I doing this? And again, it's to help people, and it's to help the people that need help. When I was an analyst, my job was treasury analyst. I made people money. I made rich people richer. Did that really help society? Did that help? No, it just made greedier people greedier. So those aren't my audience. That's not my audience. So when you technically lose a listing, it wasn't meant to be, because it's like that wasn't your
Yeah.
target audience, and I believe the belief in God helps me with the losses. It's like, "Oh, what did you learn? What is it supposed to be from you? It's
Yeah.
okay." And that's, and it just grounds you, I think, a lot of it.
And so what advice would you have for those people that are still sort of hiding and not showing their true self because they're afraid of how others.
It's worse for people to judge you for somebody you're not,
Yes.
because you're putting on a fake persona. You forget who you are.
Yes.
If you want to judge me at least for somebody who, like, which that is me.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
learned that right away. I'm like, you can't be everything to everybody, and you won't be.
No.
You won't be like, and who gives a shit of what people think about you? Really, like, all
Yeah.
that matters is that you're true to yourself. If you're true to yourself, then listen, you don't need to have everybody liking you. You might only have one or two best friends in the world, but they are your world. You might have your
Yes.
family that depends on you. At the end of the day, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I mean, say, like,
I think that's a big one. Some people really just go overboard.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
listen, you might have your opinions, but, like, listen, like, we're talking even like we're saying about the abortion issue. We've had that. Like, I've had other people go back and forth. Like, I want to hear your opinions. I have different opinions about certain things, and, like, I have friends of mine. I never shut them down, and what I say is, like, I appreciate your opinion. I
Yeah.
actually do. I love the discussion, because I want to see the other side of it to make sure I'm not wrong. And that's
Exactly.
what you should not do. Is, like, if you're trying to be authentic to yourself, be authentic, but at the same time, is listen to other people. Maybe you might not be right. Maybe it is a learning experience. Maybe there's an argument on the other side that makes you go, okay, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
It's better than just putting your head in the sand. It's like, no, this is who I am. I'm like, you also have to be open for discussion, and that may shape who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree
Be true,
more.
but be true to your heart. Like, don't say
Yeah.
things just because you want other people to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a saying, if I can remember now. Um, Gosh, I'm not gonna get it right. Something about people will always judge you, so you might as well just, say it. Might as well, because there's always gonna be judgment of some sort.
Yeah, yeah. There's that always, and there's also choose your heart too. But those two things. But yeah, there's always be able to, like, if you go to the gym too much and you're in healthy, like, and you're in healthy shape, it's like, well, look at how much time he's wasting. But if you don't go to the gym and you're fat, like, well, this guy's fat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you're never gonna win in people's eyes. You're never gonna be and
You might as well just be true to yourself. So my gosh, at the end of this life, you can say, you know what, I did it for me. It was my life. I actually did it for me. Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's only gonna be one judge, and you just gotta make sure you did right by him, and
Yeah.
that's it.
That's it. That is exactly it. Well, David, it was such a pleasure connecting with you. Really enjoyed our conversation. I know viewers will appreciate it as well. Anything else that you wanted to share before we close off that we haven't touched on?
Well, I would also be scared. We're talking about the real estate market. It's like, don't
Yeah.
always listen to the media. Like, you got to remember, I'm not a friend of the media. I think you're better off reaching to any expert, whether it's, a realtor, mortgage broker, something like
Yeah.
that. Huge, right? If your personal life as well, when it comes to if you're struggling with religion or all that stuff, to talk to an expert, somebody who's been with them before. Don't always go online and try to seek that out. Seek somebody that who's been there and done that. I think that's right now, as we know, we talked about how much people are using their phones. Well, people are rushing to ChatGPT for answers to stuff too, which even the maker of ChatGPT said, he goes, be careful. He goes, they're pulling information. It may not be 100% accurate. He's even
Yes.
admitted that. He goes, you're not supposed to use it that way. So
Yes.
whether even I had a friend of mine too, who's a realtor, like renovation stuff like that, to talk with somebody who's done that, like, or worked with this person before. Talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people. Talk to people.
Yes. That's when we're human at the end of the day. Talk to a human.
Exactly.
Thank you, David. It was really lovely talking to you. Have
Great
a
day.
good
Well,
day.
thanks for having me.